time now for us to go to the courts, and at this juncture, what we have is called the chamber. Today we're looking at online shopping. We know that around this time of the year, which is Christmas, lots of you may want to stay home and order items online. And then also when these items are brought, we would want to find out if there are problems with it. What do you do? Also, when you order something and what is brought to you is not exactly what you ordered, are there laws governing online shopping in general in Ghana? That's what we are looking at this morning. And I've been joined by Bobby Banson. He's a legal practitioner and with extensive knowledge with regard to issues, concerning shopping, online shopping, and all the legal aspects of that. And he's going to help us understand what we should all do, especially around this time that online trading seem to have taken a hike. Okay, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us.
It's always a pleasure to be here.
Good. To start with, it was just last week, Wednesday, that I bought my first item online and it was delivered to me. I thought it was really smooth and nice. But there was an issue with it when it was brought because what I ordered for was not what was given me. And so I called the guy who delivered it, he took it back and then he brought me a new one. In general, are there laws governing online shopping with specific reference to Ghana?
Yes. Within the Ghanaian jurisdiction or within the Ghanaian legal system, there's the Sales of Goods Act, which was passed in 1962, but it governs all forms of sales of goods, whether online or in person. It doesn't make any difference in terms of the legal ramifications of either. Once it's a buying and selling, the Sales of Goods Act governs.
So it automatically covers items. It covers trading online as well.
Exactly.
There seemed to have been a rise in recent days where we have all these other online platforms where people buy and sell. What do you do if, for instance, we will break it down later, but for instance, you order an item and it is brought to you, but that is not what you ordered for, and the person is refusing to take it back? What are the what does the law say about that?
I would like to state that in all other aspects or in all regards, the law requires, unless the parties otherwise agree, that the consideration, which in layman's term we call the money to be paid, should be paid at the point of delivery.
Okay.
And so if you delivered for a watch, if you ordered for a watch, and then what is delivered to you is not what you wanted to buy, you have two options: either to accept what they delivered and pay for the price of it, or reject it and ask that they deliver what you've asked for specifically. So you always have the choice of either accepting it, but once you accept it, you must be ready to pay for the price of what you have accepted.
Okay. So there's always that aspect of paying upon delivery.
Exactly, you can insist on it.
How about the ones that you pay with credit card on the online payment systems, where I order the thing, they're asked to give us your credit card details, and then you pay for it, but then what is and then there's exclusively written there that items delivered are not taken back or are not returned or cannot be returned, but then you've paid for it, but what you have is not what you ordered for.
Yes, when you see items sold are not returnable, the presumption is that the buyer has had the opportunity to inspect the items, their default or defects with the items that the buyer could have seen upon inspection with the ordinary eye. You don't need to be an expert. And so when you buy these items after having knowledge of all these defects, you are not, that is what the lawyers will call it, the buyer has to be aware of what he is buying. You are not permitted to a very large extent to come back and say, hey, I wanted this, you gave me that, but there was a defect in it. The question is, would you have noticed the defect if you had ordinarily inspected what was sold to you? And so the inscription, goods sold are not returnable, only have effect where the buyer had the opportunity to inspect what was sold, and then the defects in it, he could have seen it, but just decided to look away, to take away. So in those circumstances, you cannot come back and say, hey, this is not what I expected. But where goods are delivered without the buyer having an opportunity to inspect, so let's say they display a sample, and based on the sample, you ask that they give you a certain quantity and a certain quality, and what is delivered deviates from the sample, then you can return it, irrespective of whether or not there was that inscription there that goods sold are not returnable. The most important thing is that the buyer have the opportunity to inspect, and were the defects in the items discoverable upon inspection.
But a number of these online items that we buy and sell, hardly do you get the chance to inspect before. So would you then advise that those clauses that say that items delivered are not returnable should be scrapped?
Yes, they may even be there, but they will not have any legal import, because insofar as the buyer would be able to establish that I did not have the opportunity to inspect what was delivered to me, and what was delivered is in contradiction to what you said you were going to deliver, it doesn't matter whether you put there that goods sold are not returnable. The buyer would always have a course of action to have either the goods returned and his money returned to him, refunded to him.
Let's now shift our attention to edibles. Things that we, for instance, you order pizza and there is a specification. Maybe the first time you tried it at the restaurant, then now you order it, then they bring it to you, but what you're tasting is different from what you ordered. Now that you've taken a bite of the item or broken or opened the parcel, what can you do at that time? If you do not like it, can you still return it, although they may not have stated that items delivered are not returnable? Is it possible to take it back or call their attention to it?
With the pizza scenario, and like I said earlier on, that the test is whether or not the buyer or the consumer in this scenario would have the opportunity to determine whether that is what I actually asked for. In case of an edible, more often than not, you will not know until you've tasted it.
Absolutely.
So at the first bite or at the second bite, you can say, hey, I asked for, say, meat eater. This is pepperoni. It's not what I asked for. They are entitled, or they are required by law, to have it returned and have what you have, whatever you paid, refunded, or give you what you want, and it is the cost of the seller.
And that brings me to my next. So all of these other activities that would happen after you've rejected the item, who bears the cost?
The law says that the seller bears the cost of putting the item ordered, or the whatever is ordered, in a deliverable state.
Okay.
And so until what you've ordered gets to you in the state that you asked for, every consequential loss or cost is borne by the seller. The buyer only pays the purchase price. If you agree that, okay, the cost of transport, for instance, if you want to order for pizza, there's always a markup price for transport.
Right.
So that is different from you getting what you ordered for replaced.
Okay.
Stuff like that.
So you can get the item replaced, and that will be at the cost of the seller.
Yes.
Okay. There are those who have argued that, for instance, but still staying on edibles, those who have argued that when you taste an item, maybe the first few bites didn't seem to satisfy you, so you just were hoping that hopefully halfway through you would have, but then by the time you realize you are finishing it, and then now you are confident that this is not what you ordered for. Is there something that can be done about that?
I mean, that is an extreme scenario, but like I said, the test has always been that with an ordinary person. How do you test
this? For instance,
if it's food, and then you ask for meat eater and you are given pepperoni, you don't need 3 bites to know that this is pepperoni and not meat eater. And once you go beyond what is reasonably expected of you, it's not a car that when you buy, you may need to drive it for 1 month to see that the crankshaft is not working. This is food. So the test is whether or not the buyer, that a reasonable time with reasonable circumstances, would be able to determine that what has been delivered is different from what was ordered. So it depends on the subject matter of the transaction.
And then the products in this case, because is it possible that, for instance, do the laws state specifically which items should take which time? For instance, for the edibles, you can maybe maximum a few hours, you should be able to call back and say, this is not what I ordered. How about furniture? How about a car? For how long can you say that I've used this furniture up until this time? I do not think this is what I ordered for. Or this car, I've driven it for this time. This is not what I ordered for and I need a change.
The law does not give time limit tied to specific subject matters of transaction. The first test is to whether or not at the time of delivery, the buyer or the consumer would be able to know this is different from what I ordered for. And so for instance, if it is furniture and you ask for a brown colored furniture and they bring you a black one, at that time you should be able to know that, hey, this is not what I asked for.
Okay.
And immediately you should ask for a replacement or you should ask for a refund of your money. If you accept it, you are deemed to have, accepted it despite the defect in what you asked for. If it's an issue of a car, of course, you would be asked that before you buy, you get your own mechanic to have it assessed and everything. But if there are defects that are not discoverable by an ordinary person, the question is whether or not you were able to discover it within a reasonable time. And when the lawyers say reasonable, there's no specific classification. It's not a straight jacket. It depends on the circumstances, and the arbitrator or the court would have the opportunity to say, with this one, we think that the reasonable time was say a month, was say an hour, was say 2 hours. So it's a case by case scenario.
And in conclusion, when some of these cases go the full haul and end up in court, what are some of the reliefs that a complainant could get? Is it just the item, or it could be financial, or it could just be jail term?
The first thing I would want to point out is that it's a contract. Okay. And so once you're able to establish that there has been a breach of contract, you have the opportunity to ask for damages for the breach of the contract. You would have the opportunity to ask for specific performance, and by that I mean that whatever you asked for or whatever was due you by virtue of the contract is what you get, specific performance. You could also ask for money had and received. So if they have received money based on that, you could then return whatever they give to you for you to be refunded the monies that you paid for.
Okay. All right. I think that'll be it. As they say, a word to the wise is enough. And as you go about your shopping, especially those who will be doing that online, you need to be advised and be very careful what you order for. Be very sure what you're getting is what you ordered. And then if you're having issues, you can always go to the people and then get your act right.